So you're dicking around on your computer or whatever, and you say to yourself, hey, I want to play a man's game. I want to play an FPS. Or maybe you don't say that because, hell, there are plenty of reasons to want to play a first-person shooter beyond that. It's one of the most diverse genres in gaming. Just fucking look at GOG or Steam. There are first-person games with guns, games with swords, games with magic and stealth and bows and arrows. Not all these games have to be first-person though, which begs the question, why were they first-person in the first place? What about their design or narrative or overall feel made their developers choose that perspective over others? It doesn't take much to answer why Doom is in a dating sim or why Duke Nukem is in a text-based adventure, but could, say, Shadow Warrior's controls and perspective be shifted to a more hack-and-slash type of game, akin to Ninja Gaiden or Devil May Cry? Well, a lot more goes into that answer than a simple no, and since there are many complex elements to the answer that need substantial explanation, I'll start by delving into a game whose design is itself complex, and that is the original Half-Life.
We'll take it from here. Power to stage 1 emitters in 3, 2, 1.
I didn't play the first Half-Life when it originally came out, so I can say with confidence that it is not nostalgia goggles that makes me say the first Half-Life was friggin' sweet. In it, you didn't just have a gun and arm in the face, it really made you feel like you were a gun and arm in the face. Using seamless scripted events and player interactivity, we were drawn into the daunting struggle with the voiceless main character, Gordon Freeman, as we watched scientists not much more qualified for combat than ourselves get gunned down, torn apart, or eaten alive by creatures that stood just as much of a threat to us as they did to our dead-ass colleagues. All of this plays out right before Gordon's eyes, and because of that, right before our own eyes. The flow of these events eroded the barrier between us and Gordon to the point of being unnoticeable. In short, we face what he faces and react how he would react. Now imagine all of that in third person, or in any other genre or perspective. See, part of Gordon's, and by extension our own, helplessness comes from the lack of security being so close to the action brings us. In a third-person cover shooter, you stick to the wall and you are infallibly safe, barring any flanking maneuvers the enemy might pull off, of course. Most are designed so your standard cover position is invincible, which is fine if the game is designed around that. In Half-Life though, Gordon doesn't know these techniques for taking cover. He's a frickin' nerd. Nor do you, most likely. So when you take cover behind a wall, as Gordon Freeman, there's an uncertainty. Is my hand exposed at this angle? Do I have somewhere to escape if they throw a grenade? Being in first person and lacking a cover mechanic turns hiding behind a wall into a tense situation, a scene unto itself, every single time it happens. That, coupled with the already intense atmosphere, you have a game that could be shattered by just a few design choices being different. But everyone knows Half-Life is good, so let's get into some riskier territory. Now, I'm not saying talking about the Stanley Parable is risky. Nah, it's been plenty well received that I can use it without sounding pretentious. The risk is what the game itself did, and did really well, and that is its narrative. See, I consider the first-person games to sit on a spectrum, a sliding scale going between the older shooter fun-time games such as Doom, Rise of Triad, and Duke Nukem, and the more narrative end, like Stanley Parable, Anna, and Gone Home. There are a lot of indie games on this end due to the ease of acquiring first-person game engines for these projects, and a lot of them have turned out to be really good, so don't hesitate to go out and nab them if you're interested in game design and want to see some really creative stuff. Anyways, the Stanley Parable is the furthest on the narrative end I can think of, because you don't even have a gun, and if you did, it wouldn't help very much. Nevertheless, this game cannot be removed from the first-person perspective without crippling the narrative, a point I will demonstrate using an incredibly spoilerific example. If you don't want to hear this example, wrap your head in some delicious bacon, and I'll be finished by the time you eat your way out. In the real person ending, that is, the ending you get by unplugging the phone and destroying the narrator's narrative, and also the only ending that gives you a real the end screen, credits roll as you stare at yourself from outside the game's level. Essentially what's happening is that you are being removed from the person part of the first person. That veil between you and Gordon Freeman, the one made transparent by the tension your surroundings brought on. It is invoked here by the narrator always referring to the person you control as Stanley. Even if your name is Stanley, you yourself are likely not this Stanley, and because of this, the veil between you and him is purposefully thicker than in Half-Life. The game's purpose is to invite you into tampering with this veil. The narrator insists you go left, so you go right. Because you're not Stanley, you're you. Defy him enough, and the narrator realizes this. But instead of being given more options of control within this vehicle called Stanley, you're removed from Stanley entirely. This removal could not have been done from any perspective besides the first person, Because first person is the only perspective that questioning whether you are Stanley or you are a person playing as Stanley is completely necessary. Metal Gear Solid, Devil May Cry, Uncharted, of course you're just a dude playing as the characters in these games. The games go out of their way to show how much cooler these characters are in cutscenes when you don't control them than when you do control them in the gameplay you're allowed. Contrast Gordon Freeman's Stanley, though, who are exactly who they play like. Gordon is a rigidly marching, sloppily shooting scientist whose control and view is always guided by a player who shares these qualities. Stanley is a mindless drone that you are given the task of touring down a narrative, and whether you accept this task or not is up to you. Without a doubt, though, are we always seeing these people, always looking at their world from over their shoulder instead of through their eyes? We would be having a much different experience. Of that much I'm sure. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all next time.